Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's November 23rd. Today we celebrate one of the first successful uses of the Wardian case on a ship in 1833. We'll also learn about the Minnesota botanist who discovered a fun new cereal. We'll remember the beloved British children's author who wrote in his garden shed, and we'll salute the various ways that trees drop their leaves or not in a verse by an American writer. We'll grow that garden library today with a cookbook for gardeners with a mix of old and new takes on garden-to-table goodness. And then we'll wrap things up with a grower's tips on poinsettia care. Just a few housekeeping items for you before we get started. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. And while you're at home, you can always listen to the show on your smart speaker. Just ask Alexa or Google to play the latest episode of the Daily Gardener podcast. And she will. It's just that easy. If you get a chance to head on over to the website for the show at thedailygardener.org, you can sign up for the free Friday newsletter that features personal updates from me, garden-related items for your calendar. You'll get to see all of the books that I recommend for the Grow That Garden library segment for the week, as well as gardener gift ideas, recipes, and so on. Plus, each week, a lucky subscriber will win a book from the Grow That Garden library bookshelf. So there's your inspiration. In today's curated news, today is Fibonacci Day. And so I picked a piece from the Empress of Dirt, Melissa J. Will, and her article called The Beauty of the Fibonacci Sequence in the Garden. You can check it out in the Facebook group for the show. That's where I post all of my curated news articles and original blog posts. So if you want to check them out, you don't need to take any notes or search for links. The next time you're on Facebook, just search for the Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend and request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. And by the way, if you have any examples of Fibonacci in your own garden, go ahead and share them in the Facebook group for the show. Here's today's brevities. On this day, November 23rd, in 1833, the ship captain Charles Mallard wrote a letter to Nathaniel Bagshaw Ward. 4 years earlier, in 1829, Nathaniel developed the first terrarium when he accidentally grew a fern in an insect jar. A fern spore had gotten into the jar that Nathaniel was using to observe insect behavior. Nathaniel suddenly realized that if plants were enclosed in airtight glass cases, they could survive without water for long periods. Nathaniel constructed his Wardian cases out of wood and glass. Nathaniel's little portable greenhouses sat on the deck of a ship where they could absorb as much sunshine as possible. The inside of the Wardian case would have had some soil on the bottom. The plants would be in pots, and a series of battens would stop the plants from rolling around inside the case. After the plants were watered and safely tucked inside, the case was nailed shut, and all the seams were painted with tar to seal the case, and the ship would set sail. Wardian cases were a game changer for plant explorers who needed to keep plants alive during long voyages. Snug inside the Wardian case, plants often lived on ships for 6 to 12 months. And so it was on this day in 1833 that Captain Charles Mallard excitedly shared that Nathaniel's cases worked like a charm. He wrote, "Your experiment for keeping plants alive has fully succeeded." Before the Wardian case, salt water and sun killed most plants before they reached England. With the Wardian case, plantation crops like tea, rubber, and sugar, and medicinal and ornamental plants could be moved among the botanic gardens of the British Empire. And today is the birthday of the American plant physiologist, botanist, educator, and inventor, Alexander Pierce Anderson, who was born on this day, November 23rd, in 1862. Alexander grew up in rural southeastern Minnesota. His cousin, John Lind, became the governor of Minnesota. After getting a degree in botany, Alexander went on to teach at Clemson. 3 years later, he went to work for the New York Botanical Garden in research. This unassuming position would lead Alexander to a fantastic discovery. Suspecting that microscopic amounts of water existed inside the nucleus of starch crystals in rice, Alexander worked on finding a way to get the water out. Alexander's experiment produced puffed rice, and breakfast cereal was changed forever. Alexander shared his discovery at the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair. By the end of the fair, Alexander had sold over 20,000 pounds of puffed rice, and he had won the world's attention. And today is the anniversary of the death of the beloved British children's author, Roald Dahl, who died on this day, November 23rd, in 1990. Roald was an avid gardener, and his garden shed doubled as his writing nook, where he wrote many books, including Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. As sweet as this sounds to a gardener's ears, there was a practical reason behind Roald's writing in the garden shed. It turns out Roald chain-smoked as he wrote, and the garden shed kept the smoke out of the house. For Roald's part, he loved the idea of using the garden shed as a place to write, especially after seeing the little writing hut used by the author Dylan Thomas. If you're a gardener with a passion for roses, you should check out the Roald Dahl Rose, which honored Roald's love of gardening. The Roald Dahl Rose is an absolutely stunning English shrub rose bred by David Austin. With its blousy habit and scrumptious non-stop peach blooms, the Roald Dahl Rose has a lovely fragrance as well, and not many thorns, so that's a bonus. Throughout his life, Roald kept a diary, and there are many marvelous entries about his garden. Roald was often inspired by his garden, which is evident in his work. Here's a verse from Matilda. I liked the secret garden best of all. It was full of mystery. And here's a verse from Roald's book, My Year. There is just one small bright spark shining through the gloom in my January garden. The first snowdrops are in flower. And here's an excerpt from James and the Giant Peach. And now suddenly, the whole place, the whole garden, seemed to be alive with magic. Here's an excerpt from the BFG. But Mr. Tibbs didn't hesitate for long. Tell the head gardener, he whispered, that I require immediately a brand new, unused garden fork and also a spade. And for a knife, we shall use the great sword hanging on the wall in the morning room. But clean the sword well first. It was last used to cut off the head of King Charles I, and there may still be a little dried blood on the blade. And finally, here's a little verse that Roald wrote. Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? I live with my brat in a high-rise flat, so how in the world would I know? In Unearthed Words, today's words are about trees and how they do or don't lose their leaves in the fall. This is a little something that was written by the American writer and columnist Gladys Tabor. Weather conditions are the same for all of them. One is no more sheltered than another, and they are the same age, judging by their size. I like to think one tree decides to keep summer a bit longer, and one impetuously responds to the tide of incoming autumn. Trees are not remotely like people, but I reflect that I know some people who have never let summer go, and others who begin to think winter thoughts in July. Perhaps it is all temperament. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, The Farm by Ian Knauer. This book came out in 2012, and the subtitle is Rustic Recipes for a Year of Incredible Food. This cookbook is a compilation of fantastic original recipes from Ian Knauer. Ian's publisher writes, when Ian Knauer was a cook in the gourmet test kitchen, he quickly became known for recipes so stupendously good that they turned the heads of the country's top food editors. His effortless combinations made the best of seasonal produce from the Pennsylvania farm that has been in his family since the 18th century. Ian's home and fresh recipe innovations are rooted in the garden. Cold spring night asparagus soup and brick chicken with corn and basil salad will have you revising your plant list for 2021 and scouring your freezer for your stockpiles. Ian's ideas will strike a chord with gardener cooks. You'll find recipes that incorporate all parts of the vegetable, like pasta with radishes and blue cheese, which incorporates the radish leaves as well as the root, and sprightly Swiss chard salad. You'll learn how to make great food from simple ingredients that you have on hand, like potato nachos. And you'll discover recipes for less familiar produce from your market or your backyard, such as chicken with garlic scape pesto and dandelion green salad with hot bacon dressing. This book is 256 pages of Ian's masterpieces, along with Knauer family secret recipes, and all are simple, distinctive, and satisfying, getting the best food to the table in the least amount of time. You can get a copy of The Farm by Ian Knauer and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $2. I kid you not. And it's a beautiful book as well. So go ahead and add this one to your Secret Santa list as well, because it won't break the bank and it truly would be a lovely gift. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day, November 23rd, in 2005, that the Arizona Republic newspaper shared tips on poinsettia care from Jay Harper of Harper's Nurseries and Flower Shop. Jay grows poinsettias from cuttings in his nursery in Mesa, Arizona. He advised, important factors in selecting a poinsettia are where it was grown and how long it had to travel. Your plant should be sturdy, not wilted looking. Make sure it has not dropped any leaves, which can occur while kept in boxes for shipment. Once you get your poinsettia home, keep it away from drafts. They don't like the heater draft or the cold air from the door being opened or closed. And don't put your poinsettia right inside the doorway either. They're breakable in any high traffic area if you walk by and brush against them. Place your poinsettia on a table or in a corner of the room with good bright light and away from the fireplace or other heat sources. Poinsettias are members of the euphorbia family, and they produce a milky sap that can be an irritant. For years, poinsettias were considered extremely poisonous, but research has shown that is not the case. While eating the plant may not be lethal, it can make someone sick. And if your poinsettia comes wrapped, either remove the plant from the wrapping in water or poke a hole through the bottom of the wrapping to allow water to escape. They don't like to dry out too much, and poinsettias do better if they're kept a little bit on the moist side. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Wyoming, Minnesota with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, Kiana Rayleigh, Maddie Doyle, Natalie Decker, and Eric Begay. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media. You can follow the show on Instagram, and listeners always have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. All the stories and books that are featured on the show can be found over at thedailygardener.org, thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. Last but not least, you can share your own gardener greetings on the show by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.